The wind howled through the ruined outpost, carrying the cold of a world far from the safety of dragon nests. Tiny cracks in the walls let streaks of moonlight fall on the ground, and in one corner, a small shape shivered. Eryx, a young dragon hatchling, pressed his tiny body into the rubble, his scales dull and dust-covered. His left wing was bent in a strange angle, and every breath came with a small hiss of pain. He had expected this night to be like many others, silent, lonely, and filled with the ache of hunger. Nothing had come for him before, and he did not imagine anything would now. Eryx curled his tail around himself, trying to feel some warmth. The outpost was quiet, too quiet, except for the occasional groan of shifting metal and the distant rumble of storms on the horizon. His mother, Vaelthra, had left him to explore the world, promising to return soon, but days had turned into nights, and the hatchling began to lose hope. The humans of the galaxy were known to be cruel, or at least that was what older dragons said. Eryx had been warned that no human would ever help him. He shut his eyes and tried to sleep, but pain and hunger kept him awake. The cold seeped through the cracks in the wall and he shivered again. He had nothing. No food, no protection, no comfort. The outpost seemed to swallow him in its emptiness. He whispered his own small prayers into the dark, tiny flames of hope flickering inside him, only to see them die quickly. Suddenly a faint sound broke the night. A soft clank, followed by the slow shuffle of footsteps. Eryx froze, his instincts screaming that danger had arrived. He tried to make himself invisible, curling tighter into the corner, hiding under broken metal and scattered stones. His tiny claws dug into the floor. He waited, his small heart pounding, expecting the humans had finally found him, ready to strike. The sound grew closer, and then a figure appeared in the doorway. He was human, tall and thin, wearing a heavy coat and a helmet with lights attached. Eryx had never seen a human this close. Most dragons avoided them entirely, and those who didn't often returned with scars or worse. The human paused, scanning the area carefully, and Eryx's small chest tightened. This was it. The end. But the human did not attack. He did not scream, he did not raise a weapon. Instead, he moved slowly, almost gently, as if he were talking to the walls themselves. He carried a small pack on his back and tools hung from his belt. Eryx blinked, confused. This human was not like the stories. He seemed calm, almost kind. The hatchling's head tilted slightly, curiosity mixing with fear. He wanted to move, to hide, but some part of him wanted to watch. The human knelt down, his boots leaving soft marks on the dusty floor. His light shone on Eryx, and the hatchling felt its warmth. He wanted to run, but he could not. The light was not dangerous. The human's hands were empty, and he whispered something softly. Eryx did not understand the words, but the tone was soothing, like a gentle wind over a quiet lake. Evan Cole, the human, had come to repair a broken energy relay. He did not expect to find a creature of scales and small wings huddled in the dark. But when he saw Eryx, he could not leave him. He knelt carefully, moving slowly so as not to frighten the hatchling. "Hey there," he said, his voice low and calm. "You're hurt, little one." Eryx hissed, a warning born from fear, but did not move. He had never felt a human speak to him like this. None had. None had ever cared. He tilted his head, watching the strange being who stayed in the cold night with him. His stomach growled, reminding him of the hunger that had made the night even longer. He expected nothing, and yet, somehow, his hope flickered. Evan reached into his pack and pulled out a small container of food. He placed it carefully on the floor, keeping his hands low. "You can eat if you want," he said softly. "No tricks, no traps. Just food." Eryx hesitated. Hunger battled fear, but hunger was stronger. Slowly, carefully, he crept forward, sniffing the small morsels. They smelled strange but alive, and he dared to take a bite. Then another. His small body shivered, not just from the cold, but from the strange warmth of trust. He had expected nothing, and yet this human gave him something. The storm outside grew louder, the wind shaking the walls of the outpost. Eryx flinched at a distant crack of thunder. Evan noticed and moved closer, extending a hand, not to grab but to offer warmth. "It's okay," he whispered. "I won't hurt you. I promise." Eryx's small wings twitched. He was not sure if he should trust the human, but the pain in his body and the chill of the night made the offer difficult to refuse. Slowly he moved closer, letting the light of the human's small portable lamp fall over him. The warmth seeped into his tired body, and for the first time in many nights he felt safe. Hours passed quietly. Evan tended to Eryx's bent wing, using gentle movements to ease the pain, while the hatchling stayed still, unsure what to make of this human. The night grew deeper, but neither moved from the small corner of the ruined outpost. Outside, the wind roared, lightning streaked across the sky, and distant storms rumbled. Inside, a small dragon hatchling and a human shared warmth, food, and quiet. Eric's looked up at Evan, his small eyes reflecting the soft light. He had expected nothing from the night, not even survival. And yet, here was a human who gave him everything he had longed for: warmth, food, safety, and perhaps a small spark of trust. The hatchling's heart fluttered with a feeling he had never known. The night had promised emptiness and pain, but instead, it had brought him a companion, someone who cared when no one else had. For the first time, Eric's believed that maybe, just maybe, the world was not as cruel as the stories said. And somewhere in the shadows of the outpost, the night seemed to pause as if holding its breath, watching a small dragon hatchling discover that even in darkness, someone could bring light. The storm outside had not stopped. Rain hammered the outpost roof, and wind rattled the broken walls. Inside Eric's, the small dragon hatchling huddled closer to Evan Cole. The human had made a small fire using scraps of metal and energy fuel, its light flickering across the dusty walls. The warmth was strange and wonderful to Eric's. He had never felt anything like it. The small flame made the cold of the night seem far away, and for the first time, fear did not completely control him. Evan watched the hatchling carefully. "You must be tired," he said softly, placing a hand near the fire. "I'll stay. You don't have to be alone." His words were simple, but they carried a weight Eric's did not understand. Most humans were loud, quick, and careless. They would have attacked or run away. But Evan stayed. That alone made Eric's curious. Eric's took another small bite of the food the human had given him earlier. It was strange, chewy, and full of flavors he had never tasted. He had expected nothing from this night, and now, even a small meal seemed like a gift beyond imagining. His stomach eased slightly, but his body was still sore from earlier injuries. He lifted one wing and flexed it, feeling a sharp twinge of pain. The human noticed. "Easy there," Evan said, crouching low so he would not frighten the hatchling. He touched the wing carefully, not pressing too hard, just enough to check the bend. "It's going to heal. Just a little sore, that's all." Eric's froze at first, and used to anyone touching him gently. But the human did not pull back. He simply waited, calm and patient. Hours passed slowly. Evan built a small shelter around the hatchling using broken panels and scrap metal. It was crude but strong enough to block the wind. He even laid down pieces of soft insulation to make a comfortable floor. Eric's watched silently, unsure whether to trust the human fully. He had been alone for so long that kindness felt almost impossible to believe. Finally, Eric's moved closer to the fire. The flickering light reflected in his wide, curious eyes. He tilted his head, watching Evan work, fascinated by how the human could take nothing and turn it into safety. The hatchling had seen humans use machines and weapons before, but never for something gentle. Never for something that helped instead of harmed. "You don't have to be afraid," Evan said, noticing Eric's gaze. "I'm not going anywhere tonight. You stay here. Just rest." His voice was calm even in the loud storm outside. The human did not make big gestures or loud promises. He just stayed quietly doing what needed to be done. That was enough for Eric's to feel a tiny spark of trust. The hatchling tried to make a sound, a small hiss of greeting. It came out weak, but Evan smiled. "Good," he whispered. "You're safe here." He brought more food from his pack and placed it near Eric's, then knelt beside the little dragon, keeping the fire between them. He did not crowd Eric's, but he did not leave either. As the night deepened, strange noises echoed from outside the outpost. Metal groaned under the storm and distant lightning lit the sky. Eric's flinched, his tail curling around him protectively. Evan reached a hand toward him again, not touching, just close enough to show he was there. "It's okay," he said. "Nothing's going to get you while I'm here." Eric's did not move at first. Then, slowly he edged closer, letting the warmth of the human's presence reach him. Evan started to repair parts of the outpost that could not withstand the storm. He worked carefully, often glancing at Eric's to make sure the hatchling stayed safe. Eric's followed him with his eyes, fascinated by how methodical the human was. There was no hurry, no panic. Just steady, quiet work that made him feel secure in a way he had never known. Hours slipped by, the storm's noise filling the air. The hatchling and human formed a small world of their own inside the ruined outpost. Eric's began to understand that this human was different. He had expected nothing, a night filled with fear and hunger. Instead he found warmth, food, and a small sense of safety. For a dragon raised to distrust humans, this was almost too much to believe. Evan noticed the hatchling's breathing slowing, the tension in his tiny body easing. He spoke softly, "You can rest now. I'll stay awake. You don't have to worry." Eric's did not know how to respond with words. He could only press closer to the fire, letting its heat flow over his chilled body. For the first time the hatchling felt he could sleep without fear. The night was long but not lonely. The fire crackled, the storm raged outside, and inside, a tiny dragon hatchling learned that not all humans were dangerous. Some could care, could give, and could protect without asking for anything in return. Eric's watched the human work and felt something new, a flicker of trust, a spark of hope, and a warmth he had never known before. When sleep finally came, it was gentle, creeping over his sore body and tired mind. He curled beside the small fire, his scales reflecting the soft light. The storm could rage outside, but inside for the first time he was not alone. The night that had promised nothing had given him everything he needed: warmth, care, and the knowledge that someone was there for him when no one else had been. Eric's dreamed lightly, half awake, half asleep, feeling the presence of the human still near. His little claws relaxed, his wings rested, and his heart, small and fragile, began to trust in a way it had never done before. He did not know what the next day would bring, but for the first time he believed that maybe the world was not so empty, not so cruel. And in the quiet, with the fire burning low, the hatchling and the human shared a small victory. A night survived, a bond begun, and a lesson learned that sometimes, even the smallest act of kindness could change everything. The storm had passed, leaving the ruined outpost wet and cold. Outside, the stars shone bright, scattered across the black sky like tiny sparks of silver. Eric's, the small dragon hatchling, stretched his sore wings slowly. The night had been long, but for the first time he had felt warmth and safety. Evan Cole, the human who had saved him, was still there, moving carefully among the broken walls and scattered debris, checking the outpost's energy systems. Eric's watched him closely. Humans were strange creatures, and this one was unlike any he had heard about. Most humans were loud, careless, or aggressive. They wanted to conquer or fight. But Evan was calm, gentle, and steady. He had given Eric's food, warmth, and protection without asking for anything in return. The hatchling's small heart still fluttered with surprise and curiosity. He had expected nothing, yet he had received everything. As Eric's observed, his sharp eyes caught something unusual. In the sky, a strange glimmer moved among the stars. At first he thought it was a comet, but it did not travel like one. It hovered, pulsing softly, like a watcher in the dark. Eric's tilted his head, uneasy. His instincts told him that dragons were being watched, that humans could not be trusted, and that danger might be closer than it seemed. Evan noticed Eric stiffen. "What is it?" he asked gently. He did not rush toward danger, but he also did not ignore it. He followed the hatchling's gaze and saw the faint light moving slowly across the sky. "I don't know," he said, keeping his voice calm. "But we'll be okay. Let's stay inside for now." Eric's hesitated. His instincts screamed to fly, to hide, to protect himself from whatever was watching. But something about Evan's steady presence made him pause. The human had faced the storm with him. The human had given him warmth and food. The human had stayed when everyone else had left. Could he trust this human now, when the stars themselves seemed to be observing them? The pulsing lights grew brighter, and soon Eric's realized they were not stars at all. They were small ships, sleek and dark, moving silently toward the outpost. Dragon ships. Scouts. His mother, Veilthra, would be among them. Fear surged in his chest, but it was mixed with confusion. Why would his mother come so quickly? And why did she not attack immediately? Evan noticed the tension in Eric's and crouched low, keeping the human's body small and non-threatening. "It's okay," he said softly. "You're not alone anymore. I'll protect you no matter what comes." Eric's blinked, not fully understanding the words but feeling their meaning. The human had already risked his life for him once. Perhaps he would do it again. The dragon ships landed silently near the outpost. The air shook slightly and a deep, commanding voice echoed from one of them. "Eric's," it called, strong and familiar. The hatchling froze. The voice belonged to Veilthra, his mother. He had feared her anger, her power, and her disappointment. He had expected scolding or worse. Evan did not move. He stood quietly, observing the dragon's landing, ready to defend the hatchling if needed. His presence was calm, but his mind raced. He had never faced full-grown dragons before, and he knew the danger of underestimating them. Yet he did not show fear. He had already given Eric's the first gift, trust. Now he would not take it away. Veilthra emerged from the shadows of her ship, towering and magnificent. Her scales shimmered in the starlight, and her eyes were sharp, filled with both curiosity and authority. She lowered her head toward the small hatchling. "You are here," she said, her voice echoing through the outpost. "You are safe." Eric's looked at Evan. The human had risked everything to keep him alive. He had stayed through storms and cold nights. He had fed him, healed him, and made a shelter from nothing. The hatchling's small wings twitched. He realized that this human was different from all others, that he could trust him in ways he had never imagined. Slowly he stepped closer to Evan, letting his mother see that he was not alone. Vaelthra's eyes shifted from Eric's to the human. She studied Evan, her gaze sharp and penetrating. Most humans would have fled, screamed, or drawn weapons. Most humans would have failed to protect a dragon without expecting something in return. But Evan had done none of that. He had stayed. He had cared. And now he stood calmly before the Dragon Queen, his hands empty, his eyes steady. "You protected him," Vaelthra said slowly. Her voice carried authority, surprise, and something else, respect. Evan nodded, keeping his body still, not making sudden movements. "I did," he said. "He needed help. I gave it." Eric's felt a strange warmth in his chest. His mother, the mighty Vaelthra, had seen the truth of what had happened. She had seen the human's courage, his calm, his willingness to help without expecting anything. Eric's had expected nothing from the night. Yet the stars, the dragons, and this human had given him everything he could have hoped for. Vaelthra studied the two silently, then spoke again. "You have shown him kindness. You have risked yourself. That is unusual for your kind." Evan did not reply. He did not need to. His actions had already spoken. The small hatchling beside him was proof. The Dragon Queen stepped closer to Eric's. Her wings spread slightly, casting a shadow over the outpost floor. "You are safe," she said gently, a tone Eric's had not expected from a dragon so powerful. He trembled, but not with fear. This was awe. His mother was here and she was not angry. She was understanding. Evan glanced at Eric's and nodded. "See? Everything's okay," he whispered. The hatchling leaned closer, feeling the warmth of both the fire and the presence of the human. The stars outside shone like quiet witnesses to the moment. A small dragon hatchling and a human who had given him more than food or warmth. He had given him trust, protection, and a sense of safety. Vaelthra's gaze lingered on Evan for a long moment. Then she spread her wings and returned to her ship, her scouts following silently. The stars reflected off her scales, and Eric's realized that this night had changed more than just him. It had shown that humans could act with courage and care, that dragons could see that, and that trust could exist between two very different kinds. As the ships left, the outpost felt still again. The stars shone over the wet metal and broken walls, quiet and calm. Eric's curled beside the fire, his small body warmed by its light. He looked at Evan, his heart full of gratitude and wonder. For the first time he understood that even the stars could watch, and even the most unlikely allies could protect and give more than anyone expected. The night had promised fear, danger, and loneliness. But it had given him a human who stayed, a mother who understood, and the beginning of something new, a bond that could change everything. The next morning the outpost was quiet. Sunlight broke through the cracks in the metal walls, reflecting off the puddles left by the storm. Eric's, the small dragon hatchling, stretched his stiff wings and looked at Evan Cole. The human was already moving around, fixing broken panels and checking energy circuits. Eric's had grown to trust him, though he still did not fully understand humans. Some part of him had expected danger or betrayal, but Evan had proven otherwise. The calm of the morning did not last. A deep hum echoed in the sky. Eric's lifted his head, eyes wide. More dragon ships appeared, sleek and black against the brightening sky. They circled the outpost, landing with precision. Eric's felt a surge of fear. He knew these were not scouts. These were warriors, dragons of strength and power far beyond his own. Among them, his mother, Vaelthra, commanded the formation. Evan stepped forward slowly, careful not to make sudden movements. He had never faced so many dragons before. Most humans would have panicked, but he stayed calm. His eyes scanned the sky and the ground, calculating, observing, ready to protect the hatchling. "It's okay, Eric's," he whispered. "We'll handle this together." Eric shrank slightly, his small body trembling. His instincts screamed to hide, to fly, to protect himself, but the human's calmness reminded him of the night they had spent together. The warmth of trust was stronger than the fear of danger, and he stepped closer to Evan. Vaelthra landed in front of the outpost, her massive wings folding neatly behind her. She lowered her head to the hatchling. "Eric's," she said, her voice steady and commanding. Step aside. Her eyes then shifted to Evan. You have endangered yourself for him. Evan did not flinch. He remained still, hands visible, showing he meant no harm. He needed help, he said simply. I could not leave him alone. Vaelthra's eyes narrowed. Most humans would have run, screamed, or tried to fight. Few would stay and protect a dragon hatchling without expecting something in return. Yet here he stood, calm and unwavering. The other dragons murmured among themselves, surprised by the human's courage. You put yourself at risk, Vaelthra said. Her voice carried authority, power, and curiosity. Why? Evan looked at her directly, meeting her gaze. Because he is alive. That is enough reason. He deserved help. Nothing more. His voice was quiet but steady. There was no hesitation. Eryx felt his chest swell with something new, pride, hope, and relief all mixed together. He had expected to be alone, to face judgment or punishment, but instead, the human had stood by him without fear. The dragons were powerful, and their judgment could have been harsh. Yet Evan's courage had changed the moment, shifting the balance in ways Eryx could feel but not yet understand. Vaelthra circled the human slowly, her massive wings casting long shadows over the outpost floor. She observed his every movement, analyzing his intentions. Her soldiers waited silently, their eyes sharp and alert. She had expected fear or weakness, perhaps even betrayal, but she saw none. Instead, she saw a human willing to act with compassion, bravery, and patience. You have shown him kindness, Vaelthra said finally. Something rare in your kind. She paused. Most humans would have run. Some would have harmed him. You did neither. Why? Evan swallowed and spoke honestly. Because I could. Because it was right. And because I knew he had no one else. The hatchling shuffled closer to Evan, feeling the warmth of his presence. His mother's voice was strong, commanding, but it no longer carried anger. Instead, it carried understanding. Eryx realized that this moment was bigger than him, bigger than the outpost, bigger than the small human who had saved him. Something was changing between humans and dragons, and he was at the center of it. Vaelthra lowered her head to meet Evan's eyes. You could have died tonight, she said quietly. Yet you chose to stay. You chose to protect him when all else might have abandoned him. That choice changes how we see your kind. Evan remained still, neither bowing nor flinching. I only did what I could, he said simply. I am not asking for thanks. The other dragons watched in silence. Their queen, the mighty Vaelthra, had not acted alone before, yet here she was, speaking of understanding and respect. The small hatchling's actions and the human's protection of him had created a moment no dragon had expected. Eryx looked at his mother. He felt pride, trust, and a strange sense of courage. He had seen fear, danger, and distrust his entire life, yet this human had given him hope. And now, before all dragons present, he understood that courage and care could change the rules of the world. Vaelthra spread her wings slightly, signaling her warriors to hold their position. We will not harm you, she said to Evan. You have made a choice that few would dare. That choice has shaken us. It shows that there is more in your kind than we knew. Eryx moved closer to Evan, pressing against his legs. He realized that the human had given him not just safety, but a gift no dragon could take away, trust. The stars above twinkled as if they were witnesses, quiet observers of a moment that could alter the future. Evan looked at Eryx and then at Vaelthra. He is your child, he said simply. But he needed help. And now he has it. That is all I wanted. Vaelthra's massive head inclined slightly. You have proven something rare tonight, she said. Kindness and courage exist even in those we least expect. She stepped back, her wings stretching wide. This changes how we will see humans. And it changes how we will protect our own. The dragons remained silent, letting the moment sink in. The hatchling had been given a choice, but the human had given him everything without asking. That simple act had created a shift between two species that had long feared and misunderstood each other. Eryx looked up at Evan. He did not know how to speak his gratitude, but he did not need words. The human understood as he always had. The bond between them had grown stronger, and for the first time, the hatchling believed that the world could be different, safer, kinder, and full of hope. As the dragon queen and her warriors departed, leaving the outpost behind, the small fire burned low. Eryx curled beside it, safe, warm, and full of wonder. The choice of a human to protect him had shaken not only dragons but the future itself. For Eryx, that choice was everything, and he knew that nothing would ever take it away. The stars above twinkled, watching quietly, as a human and a dragon hatchling proved that courage and kindness could change the world. The outpost was quiet after the departure of the dragon ships. Sunlight poured through the broken walls, warming the wet metal and puddles left by the storm. Eryx, the small dragon hatchling, stretched his wings and looked at Evan Cole. The human had stayed close all night, working carefully to repair what he could, keeping the hatchling safe. For Eryx, the world felt different now, less lonely, less dangerous, and full of possibilities he had never imagined. Evan packed up his tools slowly, glancing at the small dragon. "You've been brave," he said softly. "Tonight, you faced more than you ever thought you would." Eryx blinked at him, unsure how to respond. Humans spoke with words, dragons with actions. The hatchling's heart was full though, and he pressed closer to Evan, letting the warmth and trust flow between them. 4 days after, the outpost became a small sanctuary. Evan worked on fixing the energy relay and securing broken walls. Eryx watched closely, fascinated by how humans could take damaged things and make them whole again. The hatchling began to explore slowly, testing his wings and stretching his legs. He had grown stronger during the nights with Evan, not just in body but in courage and trust. The news of the incident spread quietly. Word traveled through the dragons that a human had protected a hatchling, not for reward, not for power, but simply because it was the right thing to do. Among humans, some wondered how one man had faced the danger of dragons and stormed to save a small life. In both species, the story became an example, small but powerful, of courage, care, and trust. Veilthra, the dragon queen, returned occasionally to check on Eryx. Each time she saw the human working, the hatchling exploring, and the bond that had formed. Her eyes, once sharp with authority and wariness, softened. She realized that protection and care could exist between dragons and humans, and that a single choice, made in kindness, could change many hearts. One morning, Eryx attempted his first full flight. He leaped from a low wall, flapped his wings, and rose a few feet before landing clumsily on the soft metal floor. Evan clapped gently, cheering him on. "Good job, Eryx. That's it. You're getting stronger every day." The hatchling looked at him, a flicker of joy in his eyes. He had expected nothing from the world, yet Evan had given him everything: safety, trust, and a chance to grow. Eryx explored farther each day. He discovered small corners of the outpost, found hiding spots, and even learned to play with the simple tools and scraps Evan left around. Each discovery was a small victory. The hatchling felt a confidence that had never existed before, built on the kindness and courage of a human who refused to abandon him. The bond between the human and dragon became stronger. Eryx followed Evan as he worked, sometimes perching on his shoulder or resting near the fire. Evan treated him gently, speaking softly, sharing meals, and letting the hatchling learn at his own pace. The trust between them grew until it was unbreakable. Eryx knew that he could face fear, storms, or enemies, and Evan would be there ready to help. One evening, the stars appeared again, bright and quiet. Eryx perched near the fire, looking up at the sky. Evan sat beside him, quiet but alert. "Do you see those stars?" Evan asked. "They've watched over us before and they'll watch over us again. You're not alone, Eryx. Not ever again." The hatchling tilted his head, understanding the words in his own way. He had expected darkness, fear, and emptiness, but now he knew the world could be filled with light, friendship, and care. Veilthra returned for a longer visit, observing from above. She had seen the hatchling grow stronger, braver, and wiser. She had seen the human stay patient and gentle, even in the face of danger. She realized that what Evan had given Eryx could never be taken back. Trust, courage, and kindness were gifts that stayed forever. Her eyes softened, and she lowered her massive head to the hatchling. "You are strong," she said. "And you are not alone." Eryx looked at Evan, pressing closer. He did not need words to say thank you. The human understood. They had shared nights of storms, food, warmth, and protection. Each action, each gentle word, each small gesture had built a bond that would last a lifetime. Eryx had expected nothing from the night that had begun in darkness, and yet he had been given everything he could need. Evan smiled, watching the hatchling stretch and flap his wings. "You're ready for anything now," he said. "The world won't seem so scary anymore." Eryx chirped softly, letting the words reach him in his own way. The hatchling had learned something important: that courage, kindness, and trust could exist even between the most different beings, and that those gifts, once given, could never be taken away. As the sun rose higher, warming the outpost, Eryx spread his wings and leaped into the air, flying farther than he had before. Evan cheered, proud of the hatchling's progress. The world beyond the outpost seemed vast and full of unknown challenges, but Eryx no longer felt fear. He had learned that even when the knight promised nothing, someone's courage and kindness could give him everything he needed. The dragons, watching from afar, began to see humans differently. The humans, hearing the story, began to see dragons differently. A single act had started a change in understanding and trust that would grow slowly, quietly, and surely. Eryx, the small hatchling who had expected nothing, now held the key to a small, brighter future between two species. Night fell again, stars shining like quiet witnesses. Eryx curled beside the fire, his scales warmed by the light, his heart full of trust and courage. Evan sat nearby, keeping watch. The world had promised uncertainty, danger, and darkness, but for Eryx, the night had given him more than survival. It had given him life, friendship, and a bond that would never fade. And in that quiet moment, as the stars sparkled above, Eryx understood fully. What was given in kindness and courage could never be taken back. He had expected nothing, and he had received everything.